Hi, everyone. This is a podcast about all things modern wellness and well being. And today I'm very excited to talk with Maria. She is an herbalist exploring ancient Greek medicine. She has interest in Greek mythology and the type of herbal medicines that were used in Greece way back. And I'm very excited to learn the modern way that herbalism is now practiced with some of the ancient traditions that have come into what we do now. So thank you so much for being here, Maria.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you today.
So I'd love to learn about your journey into herbalism and the kind of medicines you work with.
Sure. So, ever since I was a little girl, I've always been interested in plants. I would always play in the garden. I would always pick up little pieces of, grass or flowers or twigs and just play with them. And then when I got older, I had um, health issues that didn't fully resolve with allopathic medicine. So it was a really good opportunity for me to explore other methods of healing. So that included herbal medicine, acupuncture, Ayurveda, um, self care practices that we really don't learn much about until we really need to know about them. And they opened up so many options on how to care for myself mentally and physically. And I had been working in an office setting for many, many years. And it really took a toll on me. So, about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I enrolled in an herbal school program in New York City. And I was so excited about it because I could finally have the tools to practice on myself and to help other people. Because working in an office setting, constantly meet people who are exhausted. Sitting in front of a computer 8 hours a day is really not a healthy lifestyle. So, herbal school was a, a like just a dump of information, really. I mean, there's so much to learn about plants. There's botany, how they grow in the environment, where do they grow, what climates. There's phytochemistry, what phytoconstituents do they have, what do those constituents do in the body. There's materia medica, which is the every country and part of the world has a materia medica, so it's plants that grow in that area and that you can find in the wild, and everything about those plants and how they work on the body, their herbal actions, what they've how they've been used traditionally, what their recipes were. Um, just so much information, and it would just take a lifetime to know everything about plants. And I was just excited to finally start learning about it. And I have so much more to learn, but it's been a really interesting journey for me. Um, and now I also so when I graduated a couple years ago, I thought, where do I want my herbal practice to take me? Because there's so many options. Herbalists can be, you can be a herbalist just for a specific issue. So for women, you can become a doula. You could become someone who just makes herbal products and sells them. So a small business owner. You could teach, you could write, you could have an herbal shop. So there's just so many options. And I had studied classics in college. So that's ancient Greek and Roman history. And I'd always been interested in ancient Greek history. My ancestry is Greek. I'm Greek. My parents were born there. And so when I graduated from herbal school, I thought this is a really good opportunity to explore both my passions together. And that's how the Greek herbalist was born. I have learned so much about herbal medicine in ancient Greek. I've been reading so many books. I'm so thankful that there's books from ancient Greece that still survive today that describe how they used a lot of their herbs. So it's just really cool. It's like, wow, this is a really amazing way to connect with people who lived 2,000 years ago. And it really sparks me. So, and yeah, so that's part of the journey, and the journey continues. We'll see. I'm doing a lot of writing, and there'll be courses coming early next year, so people can take some courses on what herbal medicine in ancient Greece actually looked like.
Yeah, and you do a lot of writing as well around that. So that seems to be like a big theme and kind of a specialty, if you say that you chose to go with. But you also offer just a traditional kind of herbalist kind of like I have an ailment, here it is, and kind of a consultation as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a clinical herbalist, which means that I meet with clients virtually and I ask them a ton of questions about what they're dealing with, what they want support with, and how herbs can help them. Or I tell them how herbs can help them because there's 100 herbs that we have here on the eastern coast, at least that we have at our disposal. We just don't tap into them as much as we should. But yes, so I do see clients, and it's been really interesting to see how herbal medicine has shifted in the past 5 or so years. It's growing actually, and people are becoming more aware about the power of plants. So now has just been a really good time to talk to an herbalist and how they can help you feel better, whatever that problem is. And I'm not going to say there's an herb for that because there's probably multiple herbs together that can help you in a formula to balance things out in your body.
Yeah, like anything, there's an art and a science combined.
Yeah.
When I started looking into the kind of modern way that herbalism is practiced, it was so exciting for me because my heritage is Russian and I grew up with my grandparents around, and my grandfather basically spent most of his time researching like traditional like cleanses and healing practices using
Amazing.
like juices and poultices and
Yeah.
different all these different extractions and teas and stuff. So I kind of grew up with that in my life, kind of just there. um,
Right.
but it was never really like integrated into a form that a lot of people could like find or learn about. So it's really amazing that this is becoming more kind of like modernized and organized, but still retaining the quality of like
Exactly.
teaching about the vegetables and herbs and all the different like natural elements that
Mhm.
exist that have different effects on our body and now we can like use. So it's amazing that it's
That's
coming
great.
back.
Yeah. That's great that you have those memories, or growing up with an element of herbal medicine, because it just, now there's the magic of it, and you could explore it now and know that there's so much more to learn. Yeah, it's definitely a practice. It's definitely something you have to commit to, but it's worth it. It's your health. It's your body. Like it
You're
will. It
right.
is. It's only beneficial to you.
Exactly. So, one thing I wanted to touch on before we got into more details about herbal medicine is a practice that's important to you personally, self care or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, there's now with the pandemic, there's, it's especially important for me and for most people, I would say, to have some self care practices in their daily routine. So I've always been a big tea drinker. So in the morning and at night, I usually make a blend of herbs. I have a personal apothecary, so I can make a blend of herbs depending on how I'm feeling that day. And boiling the water, infusing it, sitting down, drinking the tea, it's become a ritual. It's helped me slow down. It's a practice that really marks the time of day. So I'm not rushing through drinking my cup of tea. I'm enjoying it. And I think that's important when you incorporate an herbal practice or a self-care practice, is to enjoy the process of it, because that's part of the healing. And right now, the teas that I'm mostly making are for the immune system and for sleep at night. So in the winter time, the immune blend that I usually make is reishi mushroom and dandelion root. And that is a long decoction on the stove. So that's about 3 hours, low boil in a big pot. I make a lot, so I have it for several days. So reishi mushroom, about a spoonful of powdered mushroom, dandelion root, a spoonful of the root itself, just in small pieces. And sometimes I put in a little bit of licorice root because it's just an added sweetness and it just rounds out the flavor. It's really delicious. And I drink that every day. And reishi mushroom in particular is very good for the immune system. It is actually been used in traditional Chinese medicine for thousands of years, and it does grow here. It is, you can find it if you go hiking in the woods. You could come across it. So definitely something that is easy to find if you harvest it correctly, or you can buy it from a reputable online herbal store. And yeah, so it's just really, that's one of my favorite things to do, is make tea. Another self-care practice that I love doing is taking baths with Epsom salt. And this is really good in the winter when it's just really cold out and your bones are cold, and Epsom salts really just help strengthen the body, and it's just nice to rest in that. It's just one of my habits. So yeah, those are the two prime ones.
Yeah, those sound like wonderful wintry things to do. I drink a lot of tea myself as well. So it's interesting to explore, like, you know, alternate way, kind of like different teas outside of like green and
Yes.
black.
Yes, there are so many,
Yeah.
and chamomile. I mean, there's so many more herbs out there. So it's good to start exploring, and then also seeing what else. You know, small herb shops will also have blends ready made.
Mhm.
Let's go beyond Lipton tea to something else that's a little bit healthier and
Yeah.
fresher.
For
So that's
sure.
great.
Well, luckily, America does have a bigger tea culture than like other places I've been to in the world. So that's been great.
Yes.
Outside of the UK, I don't know. Some places don't have as much tea going on. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I mean,
So
I'm sure
true.
they drink other things. So let's
Yeah.
get into some details about herbalism. If you could start with just a brief summary of, what is it?
So, herbalism is the study of traditional and modern uses of plants for medicinal purposes. And while we may use plants differently today and less so than the people in the past, it's not because the plants have changed, it's because humans have changed their relationship to plants. And we're seeing a revival in that now. Um, but it's our relationship, it's humans' relationship to plants and how plants can support the health of our body. So yeah, it's just a complex system where humans just get to benefit from it, and it's free
Yeah.
medicine. So
Yes. And not so long ago, it was the only kind of medicine. So
Exactly.
I think it's definitely important to kind of bring elements of it back. Um, if
Yeah.
you could speak a little about how does our herbalism work as a healing practice, because I know you could find a lot of enjoyment and just like general support through teas and baths and other kinds of things, but
Yeah.
it was used to actually heal like different ailments for a long time.
Yes. And I'll give you an example. So in ancient Greece, or let's say on an image from ancient Greece on a piece of pottery, there is two men. One of them got injured in war, and the other one is bandaging his leg, the wound on his leg. So plants have played a role since the beginning of time to heal the body, both externally, so external wounds, from snake bites to iron weapons, you know, stabbing people.
Yeah.
Intense, but they use plants to heal themselves. And today we use herbalism as a healing practice in many different ways. So when I meet with a client to talk about their health priority, I ask them, how is your digestion? Do you go to the bathroom every day? Do you drink enough water? What kind of foods do you eat? How much sugar do you intake? How is your sleep? Do you wake up feeling groggy or do you feel refreshed? And both of these tell me how the body is working. So I ask a lot of questions to determine what's happening inside our bodies. What are the subtle signals our body is telling us so we know how to change our behavior? Because a lot of what's happening in our body is directly related to the foods we eat, the habits we have. Do we take the time to slow down during the day, or are we constantly working and working? Do we eat at our desk while we're working at our computer? These things add up. So as a healing practice, we look at the whole person, all their habits and routines, and we recommend changing habits. We recommend nutritional shifts, what supplements they may need, and if they are willing, if they commit to the practice, because I'm recommending I'm recommending 3 cups of a blend of herbal tea a day. So you need to shift your schedule to fit in a nice cup of tea 3 times a day, which can actually be really nice for a time to pause. And after a couple weeks is when you can really see a difference in your body. Even after I drink 3 cups in one day of nettle tea, for instance, nettles are high in minerals and iron, and I feel a difference if I drink 3 cups in one day because I'm flooding my body with all these minerals that it was lacking. Especially, it's good for women during their monthly cycle when their iron might be low. So um, yeah, it's definitely a complex system. It's working with the person's personality and the plant's personality and how they can complement each other. Because we definitely want um, plants and humans to work, to be complementary in order for the healing practice to work on them. So
Hmm.
it's definitely much more work than allopathic medicine, which typically recommends a pill for something. So just here, take this pill, you'll feel better. Herbal medicine is a whole lifestyle. So it's definitely a commitment, but it's better in a way than sometimes taking the pill, whatever that might be.
Yeah, so that leads into something that I wanted to kind of add more detail to because I think there are definitely differences in,
Yeah.
um, well, one, even becoming open to seeking and then taking some kind of tea or concoction to support your body in a way that may be different than taking a pill or an outside procedure. So, if you could speak to that, I'd love to hear more.
Sure. So Herbal medicine can definitely work with modern medicine. I definitely don't want to say, don't take the pill, whatever it is, because sometimes there are serious issues that you need modern medicine, and that's absolutely do what you need to do for your health. Plants help people heal differently because they can also serve as a preventative measure. If you have a daily routine of drinking a nourishing cup of tea, you may be, healing your body every day from the stress of whatever you're dealing with. So you may not have that issue down the line of whatever that is because you are taking the steps to prevent that. So just like eating all the, foods that are high in antioxidants that help boost your immune system, it's very similar to herbal medicine. It's using it as a tool to maintain your health. So medicine, pharmaceuticals are highly concentrated, highly studied uh, formulas that are typically for a singular or specific issue. And that is necessary, definitely, for people who may need those medicines. But we know the power of medicinal plants through traditional use. So we know they have worked in the past, and what our ancestors used for thousands of years before pharmaceuticals existed can give us some sense of ease that these plants do have healing properties, that they do have phytoconstituents in them that directly work in the body. And one example we can talk about is the gut and mind connection. So there have been many studies about this connection between the gut and the mind. And if, for instance, someone is experiencing a mild case of depression, what would be really interesting is if they, going to the doctor and saying, I'm depressed, typically the response is, take this antidepressant pill. What would be really cool if modern medicine could start exploring, well, let's talk about what kinds of foods you eat. How much sugar do you intake? Let's actually look at your microbiome. Let's take some tests and see, do you have an imbalance of your good bacteria versus your bad bacteria? Herbal medicine naturally does that. So I have a client who's just can't just break out of this mild depression. I recommend herbs that help both the mind and the gut. So dandelion root, which is the herb that I put in my winter tea, that is a really good herb. It's like food for your microbiome. So it helps your good bacteria in the gut thrive. If you think about dandelion, it's actually one of my favorite herbs. Nobody likes dandelion growing on their lawn. I don't know why. It's such a beautiful plant. It's entirely edible and medicinal, and you find it everywhere. It thrives in any situation, everywhere. So if you think about when you're ingesting it and taking it, it can help you thrive in any situation. So it's it's just amazing, and that's the personality of the plant. All the plants you could look into and see, like, so I think it's important to differentiate between what we could work on ourselves to help ourselves before going to turning to modern medicine, and herbal medicine helps us by exploring other options and knowing that they work in most cases. Some people need modern medicine for sure, but there's definitely some cool aspects of herbal medicine that can help people today.
Yeah, and I love that it's definitely a more holistic view of the human. I think once modern medicine started going, it kind of veered very far into like very specific, like logical, like yes or no, like very just narrow kind
Right.
of issues or questions, because I guess the market is set up or something to encourage that kind of behavior. So I think,
Yeah, you go to the doctor's office, you spend 15 minutes, you get your blood work, they tell you the results, and that's not enough. You are more than just your blood work. There is more to a person than a test.
yeah.
So I think that's definitely something modern medicine could really benefit from. Yeah.
So I wanted to get an idea of how you decide what to essentially create or prescribe or give to someone after hearing their story and lifestyle. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, so this is a good question, but it's hard to answer because it takes practice as an herbalist, a lot of studying how plants work in the body, and thinking about. So usually it takes me a couple hours after a consultation to write up a protocol. And this is because I am reviewing all my notes. I'm thinking about the person and their personality also, and what they need support with, what they talked about that really stuck out for me. And then I visualize the herbs that could help them if they just sort of come to me. So I work on their protocol and I sort of map out their wellness strategy. And I try not to overwhelm people too much because if you give someone too many things to do, they won't do it. None of it. It would just be so overwhelming that they won't even start. So I try to be as simple as possible. I if I'm creating a formula, I usually recommend either tea formulas more so than tinctures, because tinctures are herbs preserved in alcohol, and that's been a way that's been used for many many years. Also, I prefer drinking teas because it becomes part of a ritual. If I'm traveling, I'll take a tincture with me because I can't make a cup of tea if I'm traveling somewhere. But most people these days are home and they have access to, making hot water. So when I make a formula for a tea, sometimes I also stand in my apothecary and I look at all the herbs and see if anything's jumping out at me. I also think about, so there's plant has different energetics. So this means, a plant can be hot or warming to a body, or cold or cooling, moistening, drying. So depending on if the person has issues or imbalance with that, let's say, for example, someone has been very phlegmy, like they just have a lot of phlegm going on or allergies or something. I'm not going to recommend an herb that is moistening because that would keep the moisture and the phlegm kind of intact. I want to recommend an herb that is drying. So usually these are the diuretics. So this is, the fluids move through the body, and then diuretics, you go to the bathroom more often. But this is how formulas work. We make a blend and we incorporate the energetics of the plant, think about what the person needs, and um, we usually use 4 to 5 different herbs in a blend, and it's actually kind of fun. I actually love making herbal tea blends. It's it's one of so it's just a joy to put herbs together that I know will help somebody in their issue. But it does take a lot of time and thought for me, for most herbalists also, because you want something to match that person, and you want it to taste good enough so that they will drink it, because that's
How do you
otherwise.
manage that? How do you manage it tasting okay?
I know how the herbs taste at this point, so I can estimate. I sometimes actually I also make the blend for myself and drink a cup of it before I recommend it, just so I know, okay, this is going to taste good enough. Because herbs taste good. There are some herbs that are not that great. Those are the ones that don't taste that great are actually the ones that are recommended to take in tincture form. Because then you can dilute it in a glass of water and drink it down. So most herbs for tea already taste good. So that's the good thing.
Yeah, that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great that I mean, I believe that true healing like takes that kind of time that you put in and takes that kind of
Mhm.
connection. Um, so, and I mean, just your intention and interaction with the person, that in itself is like a process to help
Yeah,
them and encourage them as well, right?
absolutely. So a lot of people also are struggling when they have an issue. So I had a client who just had a minor issue, and but there was also an emotional issue related. So it's also encouraging them to find things to do that are joyful for them, and it's it's some of the topics can be very sensitive, but it's respecting that person. It's giving them space to share that with me and providing the support that they need, whether that's verbal support that they can, this is temporary, this is, you know, only a chapter in your life and things will change, and, try to get that person out of those heavy emotions. And then also there are herbs that help on the emotional level. So incorporating those into the formula. So it's definitely interesting what happens in a consult, but it's, I mean, it's great just to talk to someone about a problem generally. Like
Yes,
help
of
that
course.
in itself is healing. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that. That's super interesting. In general, learning about the environments and our world is fascinating. I wanted to include a few bits of information about ancient Greece because that is such a
Yeah.
passion of yours. So I wanted to ask, what did herbalism look like in ancient Greece?
So the very early Greeks thought that herbs were a gift from the gods. And they had, if you've ever studied or learned about ancient Greek myths, you'll know that there's just these fantastical stories of Zeus and Athena and Poseidon and just all this drama with the ancient Greek gods. And their imaginations were just so wild. So herbalism was just part of that myth culture, part of that imagination, but they also used it in their daily life. So it wasn't separate from their life, it was completely integrated. And many of the mythological gods and goddesses had sacred plant allies. So when we read some of the myths, we can some of the characters are the herbs that we still have today. It's their origin story or it's their love story. It's just amazing that we have those stories still. One of my favorite ones is the god Apollo, uh, god of the sun. He fell in love with a nymph, Daphne, and he was chasing her because he loved her so much. And she was like, "Get away from me!" She wanted to stay a virgin, so she was like, none of this. And she cried out for help from the gods, and they turned her into a tree. So she became rooted into the ground, and her arms became these branches. And the tree she became was the bay laurel tree. And we still use bay leaves today in culinary uses, medicinal uses. Usually, when I make a pot of lentil soup, I throw in a couple bay leaves. It's just a very common kitchen spice. But remembering the myth about Apollo and Daphne, it just brings to life these plants because it's like, wow, that's so cool. 2,000 years ago, someone made up the story about this tree. So it it sparks the imagination in many ways. So there's definitely that aspect of ancient Greece that is exciting to me. And things shifted in ancient Greece around the 5th century BCE when medicine shifted. So this is when Hippocrates and Theophrastus and other physicians and philosophers started to shift their focus on the ancient gods healing people, and more to how does how does nature work? How does medicine work? And they um, came up with a theory called the five humors and the four humors. And these were elements of the body that when they were not in balance, it was because one of the humors needed support. So this became popular in ancient Greece, and it was based on a combination of factors. So the what you were eating, your environment, were you exercising, how was your mental health, and all of those things affect the body. So the ancient Greeks explored all of this, and there's a lot of writing about it that still survives. And the five humors, I keep saying five, the four humors actually became part of Arabic medicine. So unami tib is Greco-Arabic medicine, which is actually still practiced in other parts of the world. So you will find universities that teach Unani Tib medicine in Asia, for example. So Greek medicine has definitely evolved, but it's still out there. It's pretty cool.
And
Yeah,
it's
it's sort
similar
of
to
like
the traditional Chinese as well, right? They adapted something similar or introduced.
so traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, these are 1,000-year-old, 2,000-year-old medicine practices as well. So they do have similarities between them, but there's also differences in what plants they use because they're in different regions of the world. So their materia medica is different. But there's definitely overlap. So there's universal themes of health that we see in these different traditions.
Yeah,
Mm.
that makes me think that if the whole world at some point kind of aligned on more or less a similar outlook on healing, how did that get lost?
Right.
Well,
Right.
it's not completely lost, but I guess as technology came in, a new mindset set in.
Yeah, science started explaining everything, and they didn't believe in traditional medicines. But I think there's hope that we can combine the two. In Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, they still incorporate that in China in their hospitals, along with modern medicine. So it's definitely possible to do both. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of conversations and lectures and just things that I'm listening to people talk about. Um, a lot of integration happening in
Mhm.
the coming years in the last 10 years as well. So it's really cool to see how like the mindset for the past whatever 200 years and and
Yeah.
before that how that's all kind of creating this new reality or like
Yes, which
new
is great.
methods. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beneficial for everybody.
So I wanted to ask, how is kind of studying and immersing yourself in ancient Greek herbalism support your own herbalism practice?
So one of the cool things about ancient Greek medicine is, um, which I think is the imagination of the ancient Greeks. I mean, they have just written some fantastical stories that are. It's like, how do they think of these things? But they wrote, dramas and comedies and myths and every human emotion that you could think of, and um, that has influenced me in my practice because herbal medicine doesn't need to be so serious. There's definitely there's definitely something that you can take away from nature that reminds us we don't need to take ourselves so seriously. We can have fun. We can bring lightness into our lives. We don't need to be these, working machines constantly thinking about work or stressed out or anxious. There's levity in ancient Greek medicine that I've taken into my practice, and it's really helped me a lot. So when I'm looking at my collection of herbs, and there's some herbs that were used in ancient Greece, and I remember the myth, it's just, it just helps me remember that there's a history behind all of these plants, and the history isn't serious. It's fun. It's light. So
Yeah.
that's
I
yeah.
think Greek and drama definitely come together, right?
Yeah.
It's funny how they really like the Greek culture used drama like so intently on showing everything that was happening as a reflection of like just life and kind of
Right.
looking at what people are doing and then creating this kind of drama for it so people could kind of reflect and see themselves in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think we've lost our just a bit of imagination. I feel like modern society isn't rewarded for their creativity, just for the fun of it anymore. Um, and I think it's an important aspect of being human is using our imaginations, and just helps us on so many levels.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
use your creativity.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you kind of moved to herbalism as a new outlet for yourself when you're looking for something outside like computer work or work that
Exactly.
maybe wasn't like the thing for
Right.
you.
Yes, I worked in fundraising in for nonprofit organizations, and fundraising is relentless. It will never end. So,
Of course not. Of course not. That's the nature of it, right?
so on to something else.
Yeah. As the closing question, I wanted to ask about what's inspiring you.
Yeah, so I think now that we're in a pretty intense pandemic, I think it's been really important for me to step away from thinking about it so much. Um, and what has come to me often is just thinking about plants in general. I mean, plants have literally been unchanged for thousands of years. They just continue to grow uh, everywhere, and it's like almost like a miracle. It's like, how do they do it? They're relentless, but in a positive way. Like they don't expect anything. They just are. You know, I don't know. They help humans in so many more ways than we show them appreciation for. So it's been it's been good for me to when I'm drinking a cup of tea, to think about the journey of the plants, where the plants came from, what, if I had picked them, dried them, or if someone else did, and think about their history. So it's like this strength of these plants that have existed have really been inspiring to me,
Mhm.
and honoring them and encouraging people to make a friend with a new plant, or just have, drink a cup of tea of the same herb for a little while and see how that changes you. Go for a walk in the park and notice things that maybe you didn't notice before. And earlier in the pandemic, when things were very intense, people weren't going near each other. I needed to hug a tree because I wasn't near anyone. I couldn't get that physical touch. So if you are near a tree that you can hug, I encourage you to do that, because it's why not? So
Yeah. I like
these
hugging
little
trees.
things.
They're
Yeah.
great.
They,
I think trees have as much energy as anything or any like human as well.
exactly.
Um,
They're just fascinating creatures. And right now, when we are having so much stress about pandemic, climate change, life, it's just important to remember that we can get through this, and we have allies in nature to help us.
yes, for sure. That's a wonderful thought. Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much. I wanted to ask if there's anything else that you wanted to mention that we haven't touched on.
Um, I think if someone is interested in herbal medicine and they don't know where to start, I would recommend, um, reaching out to me if they have questions, or start Googling a plant and learning about them. Start from there. Since it's also the holiday season, I also encourage people to support small businesses. So there's a lot of products made by small business owners using herbs and for face care products, body products, anything you can find these days. And it's really helpful just to have these on hand and support small businesses, especially herbalists right now. So um, those are my closing thoughts on that. But yes, any way we can do anything small that we can do to help each other right now, I think is really important.
I agree very much. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Anna. It's great to talk to you.